I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda, change for good, and I welcome that. I enjoy change, I don't fear it. And tonight, that quote hits differently, because a shocking, unverified claim is tearing through Royal Watch circles like a match dropped in dry leaves. According to leaked whispers and private source chatter, Queen Camilla was allegedly caught red-handed by Prince William inside the palace's most secure area during an attempt to access a crown reportedly intended for Catherine, the Princess of Wales, ahead of a major succession-related ceremony. And at the heart of it all, a crown said to feature the legendary Koh-i-Noor diamond, a historic symbol of royal power, draped in centuries of conquest, controversy, and myth, and long associated with Queen's consort before her. Now, none of this has been confirmed publicly. There's been no official statement, no press briefing, no palace announcement. But the story being circulated is so specific, so cinematic, that people can't stop asking. If it isn't true, why does it sound like something the palace would work hardest to bury? A palace THAT sleep, IT listens. The claim says the incident unfolded during a sensitive overnight window, the kind of quiet stretch when most of the palace appears still, but everything behind the walls is changing hands. Security shifts, keys transferred, checklists signed, doors locked, cameras recalibrated. It's not chaos, but it's the closest thing the palace has to a vulnerable moment. And instead of a loud alarm blaring through corridors, the palace's internal surveillance system allegedly did something far more dangerous. It silently routed the alert straight to Prince William's personal device. No sirens, no mass response. Just one man receiving one warning and making one choice. Because rather than dispatching guards or calling aides, William reportedly did the unthinkable. He went himself, straight to the secure vault. Alone, behind the steel door. What happened behind that steel door remains officially unconfirmed. But sources close to the alleged incident claim that when William arrived, Camilla was already there, close enough to the crown's enclosure to suggest she wasn't passing by, and not far enough to pretend it was an accident. And this is where the story turns icy. Because when confronted, Camilla allegedly denied wrongdoing immediately, insisting she was only inspecting security protocols, checking safeguards before the upcoming high-profile event. A professional concern, a routine precaution, a queen being responsible. But William, the claim says, rejected that explanation outright, not with shouting, not with theatrics, but with something far worse inside royal walls. A cold refusal to play along. And what did he do next? The rumor is that he acted that same night, decisively, setting in motion consequences that could reshape the monarchy's internal balance just days before Catherine's event. And that's the question everyone is stuck on. Was Camilla driven by jealousy, by status, symbols, and fear of being replaced? Or was there something deeper, something tied to the Koh-i-Noor itself? Because the Koh-i-Noor isn't just a jewel. It's a message. It's history made visible. And whoever wears it isn't simply wearing a crown. They're wearing a verdict. The air in the palace changed. Picture the palace that afternoon. Long corridors that swallow footsteps. Portraits of past monarchs staring down with stern, unmoving eyes. The kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, it feels watchful. And in that heavy atmosphere, two figures move through the same building with very different kinds of power. Camilla, hardened by decades of scrutiny, storms, and survival, had fought her way to a title the public never fully wanted to give her. And William, Prince of Wales, carried something Camilla could never manufacture: the effortless legitimacy of inheritance and the emotional authority of Diana's legacy. On the surface, they maintained courtesy, measured respect, polished appearances, But beneath that surface, the relationship was never simple. There were old wounds, old loyalties, old resentments that never completely died, only learned how to dress themselves in protocol. And then, according to the story, chance, or fate, pushed Camilla toward a door she was never meant to linger near. The conversation she wasn't supposed to hear. The claim says Camilla passed by the private meeting rooms of the royal council. She should have been elsewhere, tea, engagements, rehearsals for the upcoming ceremony. But something pulled her. Attention from recent confidential discussions. A feeling that something was being decided without her. The door, reportedly, wasn't fully closed, and voices leaked into the corridor, low, controlled, unmistakable. William. Senior advisors. At first it was routine. Schedules, optics, timing. How to advance the ceremony and secure public confidence in a monarchy desperate to project stability. See, Camilla kept her posture steady until one name sliced through the air like a blade. Koh-i-Noor. For most people, it's a diamond. For the palace, it's a storm trapped in stone. And for Camilla, the claim suggests, it was something even more personal. A symbol of the kind of acceptance she'd spent her life chasing and never truly felt she owned. She had seen it before, behind glass, in curated silence, presented like history's treasure. And every time it caught the light, it reminded her of the same brutal truth. Some women are crowned by destiny. Others are crowned by endurance and still treated like they don't belong. So when William allegedly explained that Catherine would wear the crown set with that diamond at the coming ceremony, Camilla's composure reportedly cracked on the inside. Not explosively, not dramatically, but quietly, like something splitting deep beneath ice. Jealousy always roars, sometimes it whispers. The story doesn't claim Camilla spiraled into open rage. It says jealousy arrived the way poison does. Slowly, silently, seeping into every thought until it numbed everything else. Because Catherine wasn't just the next generation. Catherine was beloved. Catherine was safe. Catherine was the woman the public chose without being asked. And now Catherine would carry the Koh-i-Noor, on camera, in history, in the exact kind of moment Camilla feared she'd never be granted. Not merely a ceremony, but a silent declaration. Camilla's era was transitional. A bridge, and the true radiance was moving on without her. By the time Camilla returned to her private chambers, the rumor suggests something in her had hardened. She smoothed her hair, straightened her posture, and clenched her fist until her knuckles whitened, because the tremor in her hands wasn't fear. It was rage searching for permission. And in the quiet of the room, the thought formed, reckless and irresistible. If the symbol disappears, the moment changes. And if the moment changes, maybe history doesn't leave her behind. The days before the ceremony, the palace in the days that followed, reportedly moved with suffocating momentum. Plans circulated, drafts prepared. Craftsmen transported velvet-lined cases through hallways like sacred cargo. Staff murmured about the future queen, about a new era, about the brilliance Catherine would bring. And according to the claim, every whisper felt like salt in an open wound. Camilla saw her own image fading. Not from the building, she was still there, but from the story, from the future, from the memory the monarchy would want the world to keep. The rumor says Camilla attempted one last strategy, quiet diplomacy. In a private meeting with a senior council figure, someone with old, conservative instincts, she allegedly argued that bringing out the Koh-i-Noor too soon could trigger unnecessary controversy. Political backlash, historical debate, the kind of headlines the palace hates. She hoped fear would keep the diamond locked away. But according to this narrative, the council, guided by William, didn't bend. Because William wasn't treating the Koh-i-Noor as the past. He was using it as a signal. A statement that the monarchy wasn't afraid to face change. And that refusal, the story says, was the final drop. Camilla realized her soft power, her quiet influence, was no longer enough. Not against the rise of her stepson. And that's when rage turned into something colder. Determination. The plan, a gap in the night. The claim says Camilla retreated into darker calculation. Not impulsive, not chaotic, methodical. She reviewed protocols, operational routines she'd absorbed over years. And her attention reportedly settled on one detail. The vault's security coverage during late-night shift change. A brief window when oversight transitions and automation takes full control. Just minutes, a sliver of time, but enough for someone who knew the palace intimately to slip through without triggering a public incident. The rumor paints a chilling image. Camilla in her study under a dim lamp, sketching layouts from memory, passages, camera angles, posts, glass case positioning, like a person mapping a labyrinth to her own salvation. And in her mind, consequences blurred. Reputation didn't matter. Approval didn't matter. Only one image remained. The crown in darkness, waiting, and her whisper to the empty room. That light should have been mine. The night of the vault. Then comes the scene that has royal watchers frozen. The palace draped in deep, historic silence. The kind where even the smallest sound feels like a betrayal. The claim says Camilla slipped from her chambers just after the clock passed the shift change moment. She wore dark clothing, soft fabric to avoid sound. Her steps were careful, measured, the stride of someone who believed she had no choice left. The corridor to the treasure vault stretched long and cold, wall sconces casting twisted shadows like warnings. Her heartbeat loud in her ears. But the obsession was louder. When she reached the vault door, she paused, then lifted a trembling hand to the control panel. And according to the rumor, she entered an access code she'd memorized long ago, either through privilege, proximity, or pure exposure over years inside the palace. A soft click, the door yielding. Inside, sensor grid glow, armored glass, cold, controlled light. And there it was. The Koh-i-Noor, motionless, radiant, like a frozen star. The story says Camilla leaned close, her breath fogging the glass. And in that instant, she didn't see a jewel. She saw a lifetime of being tolerated instead of embraced. She saw the difference between wearing a crown and being accepted in it. And then, right as her hand reached the case for what would have been the final step, everything changed. William's warning system. Because the claim adds one more layer. William had been quietly vigilant for weeks. Whispers of leaks, odd tensions, small signs that something wasn't stable. So he allegedly upgraded security to a dual-layer system. Any disturbance in the treasure area wouldn't trigger palace-wide alarms. It would send a silent direct alert to him, which meant the moment Camilla touched the case, William knew. And he came, caught in the light. A sudden white beam reportedly cut through the darkness at the doorway. Not guards, not shouting, just light and presence. Camilla froze, slowly turned, and there, framed in the entrance, stood Prince William. No rage exploding, no dramatic accusation, just an imposing stillness and a look that carried something far heavier than anger. Disappointment, the kind that doesn't argue, the kind that ends conversations forever. Silence pressed down so hard that even distant ticking could be heard, Camilla looked at her hands, still on the case, then back at William. Every excuse she'd rehearsed, security check, protocol review, collapsed under the naked truth. Because how do you explain entering a vault at midnight and touching a crown meant for your daughter-in-law? In that moment, according to the narrative, Camilla understood something terrifying. She hadn't just risked scandal. She had risked her future. The emergency council meeting. The story claims what followed wasn't a public trial, but inside it was worse. An emergency meeting room. Oak chairs, crimson drapes, old men and women who guarded the monarchy's darkest secrets. Camilla seated at the far end, shoulders no longer proud, slightly slumped, the posture of someone who knows the room has already decided. William standing across from her, rigid, controlled. No grand speeches necessary. The rumor says evidence was placed on the table, footage, logs, alerts. And then in silence, the security video played. A cloaked figure moving through the palace like a thief in her own home. Humiliation burned through Camilla because it wasn't just what she did. It was what she looked like doing it. Not a queen, a trespasser. When she spoke, her words reportedly sounded hollow even to herself. How do you justify a midnight vault intrusion as for the greater good? The contradiction was unbearable. And the council, the story says, faced an impossible decision. Expose it and risk a scandal that could shake the monarchy. Bury it and risk letting betrayal rot inside the family. William's verdict. According to the claim, William chose secrecy to protect the institution. But the punishment was still absolute. Not a public removal. Not a headline-worthy collapse. Something quieter and colder. A slow erasure. Documents slid toward Camilla. Orders stripping access to symbolic assets. Removal from key ceremonial roles. Withdrawal from major engagements. Not an execution. An exile while still standing in the room. A way of saying, you may remain physically present, but you will never again be central. When the meeting ended, Camilla rose unsteady and walked between rows of chairs, acutely aware that she was completely alone. And when the door shut behind her with a dry click, the echo down the corridor sounded like history closing. The ceremony, a new era in golden light. Dawn on the day of the ceremony bathed Westminster Abbey in gold. Inside, candle wax, aged wood, centuries of solemnity. The choir rose, the sound filling every arch as thousands held their breath. And then Catherine appeared. Not triumphant, not arrogant. Calm, composed, quiet strength. Each step down the crimson aisle felt like a vow being made without words. And atop her head, according to the script's narrative, the crown set with the Koh-i-Noor became the focal point of every camera, every beam of light. As Catherine passed beneath chandeliers, the diamond seemed to awaken, throwing sharp rays across the nave. In that moment, the Koh-i-Noor wasn't a curse or a conflict. It was continuity. A symbol that the monarchy was moving forward, regardless of the storms behind its doors. William stood beside Catherine, a protective hand occasionally brushing her elbow, small jest. Tours heavy meaning. And to him, this wasn't just a ceremony. It was purification. A confirmation that true light ends up with the one who carries duty, not ambition. Camilla lay in the dark. And then the most haunting image of all. Camilla alone in a quiet palace room, watching on a small screen. No crowd, no applause, just the pale blue glow of television reflecting across her face. She saw Catherine moving with the grace she had once yearned for. Saw the diamond blaze, the very light she'd nearly traded her entire life to touch. Her hands trembled, not with rage now, with shock. with the terrible understanding that the diamond's power wasn't in its price. It was in the serenity of the one wearing it. As Catherine smiled, calm, confident, unshaken, Camilla closed her eyes, and silence swallowed her whole, because she finally understood. She hadn't lost a jewel. She had lost her place in history. Aftermath, a new order quietly takes root. In the days after, the echoes of Westminster lingered like the toll of a bell. But inside the palace, a new order settled in quietly. William tightened security, not with theatrical force, but with intelligence, precision, and trusted loyalty. Catherine moved through public events with unwavering steadiness. She never spoke of the alleged night. No resentment, no revenge, only composure, so complete it became its own kind of authority. And Camilla. The story says she began a silent withdrawal. No official announcement, no explanation, just fewer appearances, less influence, a presence fading from the center of power. She spent more time in private gardens, touching rose petals instead of symbols. The hands that once reached for ultimate authority now sought comfort in simple things. And when Catherine's image appeared in newspapers, the sting in Camilla's chest was no longer sharp, just dull acceptance, a realization that power cannot be taken through intrigue. It is granted to those who endure, with patience, grace, and restraint. The Koh-i-Noor continued to shine in photographs sent across the world. No longer a seat of envy, a beacon of duty. And the palace, scarred, but standing, turned the page without ever admitting what almost happened in its darkest hours. Now I want to ask you, after hearing this story, do you think Camilla's alleged vault intrusion, if it happened at all, was simply a blind pursuit of power? Or was it the desperate cry of someone terrified of becoming invisible as a new era surged forward? Tell us what you think in the comments. And if you enjoy deep royal stories like this, remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You're going to enjoy it.